It is Buggy's time to shine in the One Piece world, and I couldn't be happier. Buggy is one of my top 5 favorite characters in One Piece and has been for a really long time. Basically, since I reached the time skip, I've been saying that Buggy is going to be called the Pirate King because 1, I think it makes sense, and 2, I just love him so much and I'd love to see it. I think the gag of him perpetually falling up it never gets old. I never get tired of it. And I live for memes, so having a character that is basically a walking meme, it never fails. It never misses for me. Never misses. And with this new development with him being a Yonko, with him being one of the 4 Emperors of the Sea, I couldn't be happier. Not only does it make me happy to see one of my favorite characters shine so bright and succeed so well, but I think it makes sense. Buggy is one of the most, if not the most, true pirate characters in this story. He's selfish, he's manipulative, he is, he can't say no to glory, even if it just puts a bigger target on his back. He can't help himself from saying yes. Whenever somebody misunderstands something and gives him credit for something, he's like, yeah, okay, yeah, I did that. Sure, why not? Like, his ego is so high. And he is on the record saying that what makes a fan, what makes a pirate, is the treasure that he finds, which is just, it's so piratey. He's such a true pirate. And I think it works for this organization, this pirate story, for this organization that recognizes pirates, that they would recognize the most piratey pirate out there, especially since what do they know about him? He was on the previous Pirate King's crew. He was the one who was the mastermind of and in charge of the Impel Down breakout, and that what they did in Marineford, it may not be true, but that's what they think about him. He went toe to toe with the greatest swordsman in the world and came out unscathed. He has a massive, giant following behind him and has an incredible amount of influence. And he personally knows and was on a crew with one of the already long-standing Yonkos, Shanks. It's not surprising that the world government, who already has a problem with ineptitude and with misunderstanding situations, and they've already misunderstood Buggy over and over and over again, and he just agrees to it and takes the credit. It's not surprising that that would continue, especially based on what they know about him and the fact that he is a true pirate, and I'm just happy that it's him. Anyway, I forgot to do an intro for this video. I am on vacation still. Sorry if the quality of this video isn't ideal, but I cannot miss the opportunity to have the chance to just spend a video talking about Buggy, because he deserves it. He deserves all the love in the world. And as I said, for a very long time I've been saying that I think Buggy is a big part of the end, that I think that he is going to hold the title of Pirate King, and I'll explain that. I'm going to have the opportunity to explain that more in depth now, especially since we got this reveal of him being one of the 4 Emperors. I have spiraled and kind of fleshed out this theory a little bit more. I know tons of people are talking about Buggy right now. A lot of people are talking about him in the endgame, so maybe you've heard some of the things I'm gonna say, but I can't miss an opportunity to talk about Buggy. So there's this line that I've really latched onto and haven't been able to let go of, and it's when we first meet Buggy, and the context is that he's been calling him, or he's been saying that he's going to be the next Pirate King. And when he meets Luffy, Luffy says that he's the man who's going to become the Pirate King, and Buggy responds with, "You, the Pirate King? Well, then what does that make me, Pirate God?" And I just have not been able to let go of this line, because I think it's the perfect opportunity for Oda to come back around and pay this off with a masterful gag. And the fact that Buggy continually gets attention and continues to fall up and not just kind of become a background character entirely, but a background character that Oda keeps calling forth, I feel like we're getting that set up. Not to mention, every time Luffy goes somewhere or does something, not every time, a significant amount of the time when Luffy makes a big move, when something big happens with him, Buggy's right on his heels. Luffy and crew enter the Grand Line, which is a huge thing. Buggy right after. Luffy, well, this was actually before, Luffy meets that guy in a box on an island that seems insignificant to the story, but a lot of people theorize the One Piece could be on that island, and that's why we were there and why that seemed important despite also not seeming important at all. Buggy met him and developed a great friendship with him. Then Luffy entered the Grand Line, Buggy on his heels. Luffy proves himself to be of equal value, of worth, to be worthy of standing up against the warlords. Buggy becomes a warlord. Luffy takes out 2 Emperors of the Sea. Buggy becomes an emperor right there with him. It's just every time Luffy breaks the ceiling and does something newly significant, Buggy is right there behind him, and I just see that continuing on. And imagine what it's gonna be like if Buggy awakens his devil fruit. I know people are talking about this, it's not unique to me, but a lot of people are saying if he does awaken his devil fruit, which may not happen, it has a lot of potential. I personally like the idea that, you know, now he's able to be cut and not be harmed, but once it's awakened, he has the power to cut anything without, you know, boundaries. I don't know. Anyway, imagine if Buggy can split atoms and then he just, at his fingertips, has the ability to create these atomic, massive explosions. Would that not just elevate what he already has with the Buggy Balls? Something that's already really clever and intelligent and truly detrimental to a lot of people. Now he can just split an atom and make a Buggy Ball elevated like crazy. Suddenly he has such amazing powers. You know, this devil fruit of his that's kind of a gag and a comedic relief, it could actually be something very, very powerful, but will also still always be a gag because Oda's still Oda, and I don't want that to change either. That's a side tangent. Back on track. The point is the fact that Buggy has always been on Luffy's heels, and the fact that that Oda's not dropping him, which he doesn't drop his side characters anyway, but he is really significantly not dropping Buggy and calling back to him, and Buggy's always on Luffy's heels. The fact that we're doing this, and now the fact that all 4 of our emperors are very specifically and uniquely connected in the way that they are, to me means that these 4 emperors are on a crash course. They are on track to have a massive collision. I have said before that my theory is that Luffy is going to become the Pirate King before we enter the final battle. He's going to find the One Piece, become the Pirate King. Laboon's going to be a big part of it. I'll link that video over there because I have a video dedicated to all this. That Luffy's going to become the Pirate King first and then final battle. So here's my theory with Buggy, because I really think that he is a very significant part of the ending of One Piece. So here's my theory of how I think that this could all play out. There was a line when we got the Roger flashback, when we got the One Piece flashback, where Buggy got sick and Shanks decided to stay back with him, and he told him that they would, no problem, they would go back and find the One Piece together one day. I totally think that's gonna happen. So I like the idea that Shanks still has really fond feelings for Buggy, and Buggy is still holding that grudge against Shanks. And so when they do reunite, Shanks is gonna be happy to see his pal. Buggy is going to be mad that Shanks is around and bitter, and, you know, Buggy. He's going to be very emphatic like Buggy is, and Shanks is going to be super chill and think that Buggy's antics are funny. I can totally see Shanks and Buggy ending up traveling together, either with Luffy and arriving at the One Piece with him, or being just right on his tail, just like Buggy always is, and just arrive right after him. But either way, I definitely see that, not definitely, nothing's definite in One Piece, but what I see in my mind is that this crash collision course that I think we're on track with the 4 emperors is going to happen at Laugh Tale. So Luffy and crew will arrive, Luffy will find the One Piece, Luffy will become the Pirate King, and Buggy and Shanks will be right on his tail, or possibly arrive with him, but still Luffy is the one to find it. And they're all there together. And I love the image of, you know, Shanks and Buggy with their arms around each other because they've they've, you know, made up. And Luffy there, and they're all just laughing. They've all seen the One Piece and they laugh. And then Blackbeard arrives. And that's when we get the Blackbeard x Luffy fight that we've been waiting for so long, now as two Emperors of the Sea, and we'll have Shanks and Buggy there as well. I think that it could go in a lot of different directions. I could see Buggy not being on Luffy's side, maybe trying to team up with Blackbeard, or maybe just trying to get out of there. Shanks happily fighting next to Luffy, and then Buggy, I could see him doing what he often does, which is accidentally helping. Remember in Marineford when Buggy accidentally catches Jinbei, who's holding Luffy, and accidentally rescues them, and Buggy is not, it was not his intention, but at the end of the day everybody thought he was a hero, and he was like, "You okay? I will be a hero." I could totally see that happening here too, where maybe Buggy, because he was present for the big Roger Pirates and Whitebeard Pirates clash, maybe he saw Blackbeard's weakness, but he's never had any reason to use it, but he accidentally divulges that to Luffy, or calls it out, or remembers it and is just talking out loud, and Luffy hears him, and he doesn't mean to help Luffy, but he does. And then Luffy misinterprets that as Buggy intentionally helping him and sees him as a comrade, but Buggy doesn't want to be a comrade. You know, like, I could see this all working in a really cohesive way to be hilarious, but also to be an incredibly epic fight, to have a lot of meaning, to have a lot of impact. And then in the background, Buggy's just mad at everybody because nothing's going the way he wants it to. And then either the battle ends there, or it pauses there because Blackbeard gets away or something and continues at the final battle, or maybe it's, you know, completely contained in Laugh Tale and then they continue on to the final battle. But then when they all arrive, when Luffy arrives at the final battle as the Pirate King, and maybe whatever the One Piece is a physical thing that he can hold, that people can see and say, "Oh, he's Pirate King." I don't know. I really don't like to theorize about what the One Piece is, because I don't think any of us will ever, I don't think any of us is gonna guess it. I think Oda just has something up his sleeve that's not predictable. But imagine that they arrive there and maybe Buggy has decided to be an ally to Luffy, because this is why I think this could work, because Rayleigh is someone that Buggy really, really values. Do you remember whenever Buggy and Luffy first met, and Luffy mentioned that he knows, was it when they first met? It wouldn't have been when they first met. Remember when Buggy and Luffy came together at one point, and Luffy mentions that he knows Rayleigh, and then Buggy responds with cutting the antics, cutting the games, cutting him what he is, and just quietly and happily listens to Luffy talking about him, and even admits that he misses Rayleigh. He obviously has a lot of respect for the guy. So I could see Buggy potentially forming an alliance with Luffy for the final battle and trying to help because Rayleigh's there, and Rayleigh, you know, Buggy wants to be on Rayleigh's side, or Rayleigh asks Buggy to help. I can see him potentially being on our side at the end and having like a low-key redemption arc, low-key, because he will always be the selfish, lying manipulator that we all know and love. Or I could also totally see him not being on Luffy's side at the end, but everybody on this side just kind of like either thinks he's on their side or laughs and they're just like, "Ah, Buggy." Anyway, and they're not worried about him. And I could see potentially when they arrive and Luffy arrives to the final battle against the Celestial Dragons, against the world government, against the Four Elders, against the powers that be, when Luffy and crew and everybody, his grand fleet, and everybody that has chosen to follow him and value him along the way, Shanks and Rayleigh and all the people, Princess Crybaby, all the people that would care, they're all there alongside him. But as is the pattern for this series, the White Guard misinterpret the situation and think, "Oh, Buggy is the one that found the One Piece. They all came from Laugh Tale. There's something that should make them be aware that the Pirate King has been named," and they'll look at it and they'll completely misunderstand the situation as what keeps happening, and they'll say, oh, you're the Pirate King. And I could totally see Buggy not being on, I could see him being on our side. I could also see him not being on our side. And we have this big, epic, incredible battle that we're all going to love. I have no doubt about that. It's going to be an amazing fight with a lot of really heavy, thematical, amazing moments, as well as just, I can't wait for it. And in the background, Buggy has a huge target on his back as the Pirate King, and he's just running around screaming, trying to escape his demise, and everybody is just like looking over at him and laughing, and it's like, ah, Buggy, and then they keep fighting. Like, I could totally see that happening. Oda is so good at balancing theme and drama and action and heavy, intense moments with humor. He's so good at balancing these things, and I could totally see this final battle having the walking, living meme as our comedic relief throughout this intense, amazing battle. Wouldn't that be awesome? And I really think that Oda could totally give us the dramatic, intense, beautiful moment that it should be when Luffy is, for the first time, if the first time he shows up as the Pirate King. You know, if he does get that title before he goes into the final fight, and then he arrives at that battle as the Pirate King, I know that Oda would allow that moment to breathe, and it would be impactful. It would be something that, for those of us who cry, it would make us cry. It would make us sob, because it would be the moment that we've been waiting for, apart from actually finding the One Piece and getting the title, being presented, you know? Like, it's still gonna be an incredible moment before this amazing moment shifts to, oh, he's the Pirate King, and the gag of Buggy runs wild. And I could even see, remember that line where Luffy says, I'm gonna be the Pirate King, and then Buggy responds, you? Well, then what does that make me, the Pirate God? I could so see, you know, Mihawk or anyone trying to cut Buggy in half or cut his head off, and it comes right off, and then he just yells at them and runs away, and they misunderstand that, which the White Guard has already seen this. I could totally see them misunderstanding that, though, and thinking, oh, is he invincible? Is he immortal? And then, you know, if he has this amazing awakening devil fruit, and he has this incredible power of just splitting atoms and creating bombs, then they could also see that as godlike power. And I could completely understand the White Guard, who's already really tense about Luffy's devil fruit awakening, saying, we have 2 Emperor Gods? And then suddenly Buggy holds the title of Pirate King as well as Pirate God, and you know, bigger X on his back. And it would be amazing. Bringing it down from my off-the-wall predictions and from all of that, and getting back to just talking about Buggy and who he is. He's more than just a walking meme. He's more than just the comedic relief character. I really do think that there's a lot of intentionality in the way that he's written, in not just the gag sense. He believes in true piracy. He truly cares about his crew, but is also willing to let them go. He has the same draw to him that Luffy does, where people are just inclined to follow him and to believe in him. And while him gaining so many followers in Impel Down was largely luck, since then he's been able to maintain them. He's been able to keep their loyalty and their trust, and that is something that takes honest and true skill. He's a lot like Usopp in his self-fulfilling prophecy kind of energy, and I think it's important to note that what Rayleigh said about Luffy was that his true ability isn't his battle prowess, but his ability to gather people under his banner. Buggy has that same skill. It may not look exactly the same on him, and he may not use it in exactly the same way. Luffy is barely even aware of this ability, this skill that he has, and he doesn't always want it. And Buggy, he basks in it. Anytime he falls into luck, falls into title, falls into glory and praise, he eats it up, and he manipulates with it, and he is a pirate. Luffy is also a pirate, but they do it different ways, but they are kind of 2 sides of the same coin, and it's kind of fun to see these 2 characters that have this very similar draw to them use it. They'd just be very different people with this ability, and I see a lot of connections between them, and I'm looking forward to seeing what Oda does with it. I hope he continues this, because I think that there's enough foreshadowing and there's enough build-up and there's enough strings connected here that it could be such a satisfying thing to bring Buggy into the ending with us and let him play a major role without undercutting anything that we have set up for Luffy. I think that it could be the perfect combination of impact, action, payoff, and gags, which is what this series does. Anyway, I couldn't be happier for my boy. I think that he deserves all the love, all the glory, all the attention, and I'm just really happy about this. I'm putting out this video later than I had really hoped to. Like I said, I'm on vacation, so I'm just not making videos as quickly as I would like, so I hope I said something different from what you've heard elsewhere. Sorry that the lighting kept changing, sorry that there's noise in the background. And I have a very, you know, low-key setup here. But I hope you enjoyed the video. I enjoyed talking about one of the best characters in the series, in my opinion. Feel free to chat with me more about it in the comments. How do you feel about the developments with Buggy, and what do you think his role is going to be moving forward? I post videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here. Thursdays on the second channel, soon to be Tuesdays there too. I post a lot, so subscribe if you feel like it. Check out my Patreon if you want. We do live readings of the chapters over there, and we have a great time. I will see you again soon. Bye.